Hello, BookTube. All right, this channel recently hit 5 million views. I don't believe it any more than you do, but there's no denying the reality of it. And I put out a call for questions, and I got a bunch of them. So we're on part 3, I think. This is part 3. And we are up to Aaron Donahue. Congratulations on 5 million views. Donahue is a great last name. Reminds me of a TV show that ought to have gone for 10 seasons. And that you really should try to find and watch. You will absolutely love it. It's called The Black Donahues, about a working class Irish family. And it is incredible. It's amazingly good. I strongly, strongly advise it. I've never seen it on a streaming service. I've never seen it on video. But I watched it and loved it when it was out. You will, The Black Donahues, you will love it. But anyway, number 1, what are your thoughts on historical biographies of Harold Lamb? Oh my, I love them. I absolutely love them. They're great. They're long since out of print, right? I'm assuming that Harold Lamb is completely out of print. They don't have any scholastic rigor to them, but they're so fun to read. They're so engrossing to read. If I were to come across battered old paperbacks of them at the Brattle Bookshop, I would grab them even if they only lasted me one reading. I've read them all, and I think they're great. Number 2, what happened to the Steve Donoghue Show podcast? Yeah, well, I'm not able to answer that, right? I would have to get some sort of working response from the Cedarburg Public Library. And working responses from the Cedarburg Public Library are hard to get these days. I would love to see what's going on with the Steve Donoghue podcast, or maybe the Cedarburg Public Library would like to run my column. I don't know. Let's see. Harfoot Fallowhide says, congratulations on 5 million. What is the first comic book you ever got? That was Adventure Comics number 217, which was a lot of money. It was 10 cents. That was a lot of candy. That was a lot of dog treats. That would have been 10 of either one of those. Eat 10 candies or 10 dog treats. Instead, I spent 10 cents on Adventure Comics number 217 with a cover story where Superboy is saying goodbye to Ma and Pa Kent. He's flying away up over Smallville with all of Smallville watching. Ma and Pa Kent are all heartbroken. He's saying goodbye to them because he's leaving with his real parents, Jor-El and Lara, who are flying off into the air with him. How can you not buy that? How can you not read that story? So that was my first one. It was a wee thing. In fact, I hadn't yet been born, right? Because I'm 28 years old, and that was a heck of a long time ago. So, let's see here. Rhonda Struthers says, each milestone in our lives should not be taken for granted. Congrats to you on yet another amazing milestone met. No matter how big or small, they should all be cherished. Well, I agree, but that's not a question. And also, you're supposed to be complimenting me. Steve needs validation at all times. Abirami says, questions. What work of art best captures all aspects of romantic love? Oh my God, I have no idea. Stereotypically from the movies, from the great movie Shakespeare in Love, that is Queen Elizabeth's question. Can a work of art capture the true essence of being in love? And she bets that it can't be done. And the whole conceit of the movie is that Romeo and Juliet does convey that. People often say it's some song or some other, but I think most song lyrics are trite. Do you agree? Well, if we're talking about trite song lyrics, that actually brings us within kissing distance of something that summarizes romantic love really well. And that is the song that Paul McCartney wrote specifically to tweak the nose of John Lennon, about silly little love songs. It's itself a very silly song, a very trite song, except for one little part where he says, the lyrics go, love doesn't come in a minute. Sometimes it doesn't come at all. I only know that when I'm in it, love isn't silly. It isn't silly. Love isn't silly at all. And which of us, if you're lucky enough to have ever experienced being in love, who of us wouldn't agree with that? It's the whole world. Not loving someone, but being in love, being head over heels, passionately in love. I love that lyric the minute I heard it. I hate the song. It's a horrible earworm. But that is absolutely true. And the way that Paul McCartney sometimes had with his lyrics to just hit on a lyric that is just simple and completely true. I only know that when I'm in it, love isn't silly at all. I love that. But anyway, Linda Schwab says, congratulations, Steve. I've been contributing to that view comp for several years now. Well, thank you. But again, as noticed, that is not a question, much less a validation. You're supposed to be talking about my raven wavy hair. Bass Van Dyke says, "Hey Steve, do you have a favorite historical period / place to read about?" I have a few: ancient Rome, Renaissance Italy, the so-called progressive era. God help us, not the 21st century, but the beginning of the 20th century in America. And what would you prefer? What would your preferred historical period / place to live in be? Well, my standard answer to this has always been the present. I don't yearn to live in some period before fluoridation in the water, before deodorant, before anything like that. That standard answer becomes a little bit problematic, as the 21st century kids say, about anything that they personally don't like this minute, because of the changes that are coming to my country, to America, to the United States of America, very soon. In 8 months, those changes begin, and in 2024, those changes take a more or less final form. And they're going to be horrible. That's going to be absolutely horrible to live through. It's going to change my answer. But you're not going to be able to hear that, because I'm pretty sure there isn't going to be a YouTube then. Leo Percara says, "Hello, Steve. Do you think you could pass college tests at random, without preparation, in any career that doesn't need math? I think you know more and have read more than any American college kid, or at least most of them." Well, yeah, but it's not about knowledge anymore. I'm sure that I would fail in most of the tests that are in colleges today, because those tests are created, proctored, graded, and assessed by people who are functionally full-time living in an alternate reality. And I don't agree with the tenets of that alternate reality that I know, and I certainly don't keep up with the latest continuity. I mean, what you're basically asking me is, could I pass a test on the TV show Firefly? That has a lot of passionate fans out there. I'm not one of those passionate fans. I liked it fine. But do I know the character backstories? Do I know all the names and the various associations of interplanetary organizations? No. So if the tests were on Firefly, on the minutiae of Firefly, I would fail no matter how well read I am. And the same thing is true with college tests today, especially in America. If I were to go into one of those tests, hypothetically, I am not saying this for real, I don't want to be demonetized and driven out of the public sphere, but if I were to say, hypothetically, there are only two sexes, there are only two biological sexes. If I were to say, hypothetically, no living creature on Earth, and especially no human, is non-binary. If I were to say those things are just categorical, observable, provable facts, well, you can see right away, right? I mean, that's the absolute basic of the alternate science fiction worldview that is the background of all of these tests. That's not even the latest details. That's just the basics. That's the heliocentric model. That's the basics of the heliocentric model. If you go into a test like this saying there are only two genders, and no one is non-binary, except for rare medical conditions, no one is non-binary, then you're out of the whole realm of the test anyway, no matter how well read you are. So I'm sure that I would fail. You had another question, though, right? Does any insect scare you, either for being dangerously poisonous or just how they look? Well, they all look freaky. They all scare me for how they look. None of them are dangerously poisonous to me. Freakish yoga. I was wondering how long. You want to get down here, maybe? Or are you just doing yoga for the fun of it? I swear, you people are going to watch these Q&As with the sound off, because it's just the baby that you're thinking about. What are you thinking? Huh? You think you want to get down? I'll help you if you want me to. You know that if you walk around, you're going to want to come back up here. What's the baby doing? Huh? Do you want to come down here? There we go. Maybe you just want to sit. Yes, you do. You just want to sit. Okay. She doesn't want to get down on the floor. She's just sit next to me. Oh, no, now she is down on the floor. All right. Let's see here. You got it. Oh, right. Insects, dangerously poisonous, that sort of thing. I am largely immune to cytotoxins, so no poisonous insect is really that dangerous to me. It can certainly be a lot of discomfort, but it can't kill me. And so I would only be how creepy they look, and I think the winner there has to be spiders, right? I mean, it's a trite answer, but that has to be it. Let's see here. Oscar Mendoza says, "What are your thoughts on Harold Bloom, his books, and his influence on the critical reception of writers past and present?" I like his books very much so. I think his longest standing contribution... What is the matter, baby? What is the matter? I'm trying to make a video. Do you want to come down here? Well, don't jump down on the floor if you don't want to be down there. There you go. There you go. There's a good girl. Let's see here. I think probably his longest standing contribution to the critical discourse would be the idea of the anxiety of influence. But that's a fairly obvious idea, and his book is almost unreadable. Let's see here. Blue Laser Ryan says, have you read... Oh, she wants to be next to me. She just wants to be fussing over her. She doesn't want to sit next to me without me petting her. Okay, fine. I'll hold my iPad in the other hand and just pet the baby. This was right there next to me. That was Malin's spot. It was right there next to me. Blue Laser Ryan says, have you read To Antietam Creek by Scott Hartwig? Scott Hartwig is great. He's great. It is a lead up to the Battle of Antietam. The author has volume 2, which covers the battle, coming out pretty soon. Would love to hear your thoughts. He's fantastic. I love his books. Any favorite books on Civil War battles or biographies from that time period? Yes, quite a few. Starter kit on its own, but not anything for a Q&A. Jack Hanlon says, Steve, over the years you've made many references to the surly houseboy of Hyde Cottage, yet in over 5,000 videos we have never seen nor heard this man Friday. Aside from your eyewitness testimony, is there any evidence, even a grainy photograph, that proves the existence of this body man? What is his name? Describe him. What is he wearing? How tall is he? What color were his eyes? Okay, I cribbed that last bit from Gowron. Congratulations on 5 million views. Well, true, my surly houseboy has never made an appearance on video, and he is also very shy around when visitors come to the place. He tends to disappear. But I believe one visitor has seen him. I think Sarah at the Bookish Knitter has actually caught a glimpse of my surly houseboy and can testify to the fact that he is real. And I remember one time somewhere, maybe on one of her videos or one of mine, she mentioned, guys, there is a surly houseboy. I've seen him, and someone actually had the cojones to say, well, how do we know to believe you? I would not take that tone with Sarah if I were you. but I don't think he's ever going to make an appearance on a video, but I assure you he does exist. Could I maintain all of this without help? Let's see here. William Fett says, great job on 5 million views. Well, I literally had nothing to do with it. Just a few questions. Who are some of your top romance authors? Oh my. How much time have you got? Eloisa James. Joanna Shupe, I really like. I'm not sure if I'm saying her name right, but I really like her. Oh God. Well, I'm blanking now because of course you're asking the question. I'm blanking now, but I have what's her name? Oh my God, I'm blanking. Berrigan is her last name. I just mentioned Sarah. She would kill me for not remembering these names. She has them at her fingertips, but I don't. I even like some of the older ones, like Joanna Lindsay or Amanda Palmer. There are a whole bunch. I would say right now there are probably, if we use the distinction auto buy. I don't buy these things, of course. I'm not a barbarian after all, but auto get from the publisher. There are probably a dozen romance authors now that do. BJ Daniels does, for instance, contemporary cowboy romances that are terrific. Oh my God, they're so textured. But anyway, you had another question, yes? Your thoughts on Phyllis A. Whitney and also Dorothy Eden? I've read Phyllis Whitney and I kind of like her. Dorothy Eden, I don't think I've read. I know you've spent a lot of time on water. Have you ever been seasick? No, I don't get seasick. It always helps. Candace Uri says, way to go, Steve. You sexy booktube influencer, you. Have you decided on any read-alongs this year? Just my 2 cents, since you said Ovid's Metamorphoses is your favorite book. I think you would be perfect guide, hint, hint. We haven't done read-alongs this year. I know, they're so much fun. And we've had so much fun doing them on this channel, but it's just gone right off the radar. I'll have to think about that. Rebecca Clyburn says, have you ever owned an aggressive dog? How would you deal with one? I have owned aggressive dogs, and there are grades, right? There are levels in all things that I've had to deal with. Everyone, because dogs, Canis familiaris, that have undergone, domestic dogs, have undergone accelerated and sometimes very brutal, compressed selective breeding, which is why you can get a dog that looks as freakish as a basset hound or as freakish as a miniature schnauzer, and that. Sometimes that will wire a dog wrong. Sometimes a dog will just be wired wrong. So that not only are they aggressive, but they can't turn it off and they're miserable. And as heart-rending as it is, a dog like that cannot be made happy. And the space in your life that you are lavishing on a dog who cannot ever be made happy is space that could be given to the thousands of dogs within a 1 mile radius of you who would be happy and who desperately need that space. So that's the worst end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum is a dog who is aggressive to other dogs, but perfectly friendly to people that the dog knows, to humans, or even sometimes to pets. But strange dogs, strange animals, they become uncontrollably aggressive. And there are ways to help that. There are ways to calm that down. It doesn't have to be permanent. It doesn't have to be that bad. Or you can simply control the dog and not give them any association with stranger dogs, just your own family group. For instance, that was true of my beautiful Malin Moore, my beautiful pointer, one of the 2 dogs that I had previous to Frida. Malin was so incredibly protective of my Basset Hound Lucy that she automatically flew into an aggressive posture with all dogs that we met, which was pretty awkward on the walk because Lucy was perfectly friendly. In fact, even more so. Lucy was always looking for that one special fella. Never happened. But with Malin, I just kept her away from other dogs. I just had to do it, which could be awkward, just mechanically speaking, because I wanted Lucy to have contact with anybody that she wants contact with. I just had to hold Malin back while she was barking the whole time. And I've had dogs in between, too, that usually it can be worked with if you can find a good sympathetic trainer. It takes a bit of you have to gradually redirect those impulses. Bad trainers tend to do it with food bribes. If you're desperate, that will certainly work. Almost always that will work. Good trainers do it by gradual desensitization of the dog, gradually acclimating the dog to get at what they're afraid of, because that kind of aggression is always fear. And work it out. It's not always a lost cause. The only reason I opened my answer with the lost cause is because I want dog owners to recognize when it's a lost cause. If your dog is snapping at you, if your dog is never happy, if your dog is staring suspiciously all the time and skulks over to their food and snarls at everything that moves, that dog has been wired wrong. There's virtually nothing you can do to fix that. But anyway, that's a very depressing answer. Let's move on. Edward Craig says, why do you think some others are forgotten while their peers, you must mean authors. Why do you think some authors are forgotten while their peers remain in print? I asked you once about Brodigan versus Vonnegut, but there are other examples, such as Thomas Berger versus John Updike. Yeah, it sometimes is random happenstance. Sometimes it's that an author is willing to call in favors with the critical community and get a lot of talk about their books. Sometimes even some authors, including some 20th century American novelists, are willing not only to do that, but to actively work to torpedo the critical reception, the word of mouth of contemporaries, some contemporaries. Sometimes out of pure spite. Dated the wrong girl. Said the wrong thing at a party somewhere, and all of a sudden it's my mission in life to make sure your literary career does not succeed. There's some horrible demons being worked out in the background there, and it is true. It's always worthwhile to look at some of those peers. Anthony Suppa says, hi Steve, what is the biggest book you have ever read in one sitting without stopping? I don't know exactly. It'd be in the running. It'd be in the area. Probably A Distant Mirror, Barbara Tuchman. I read that in one sitting without stopping. Couldn't put it down. Literally couldn't put it down. And that's what? 700 pages? Something like that? It'd be around that area. Anything longer than that, and there's usually a dog that needs attention. Joel Swagman says, I was confused by the Brothers Karamazov. I know Dostoevsky was very religious, so I expected the religious arguments would win out. But then I was confused when the skeptic Ivan made a number of strong arguments against God that were never refuted. What was Dostoevsky trying to do? You're asking me what he's trying to do? Probably trying to intrigue you. It certainly worked, right? I've encountered people who have that kind of a question. I think it's the wrong kind of a question to ask. But I would also argue that there are people who know Dostoevsky on BookTube a lot better than I do. But I would argue that if you were to dig up Dostoevsky and ask him, he would say that those arguments are refuted in the course of the Brothers Karamazov. Nick Piccarilli says, do you have a favorite movie set in Boston? The Boston Athenaeum. The fifth floor of the Boston Athenaeum has been a movie set for a few things, including a famous scene in Amistad. And it would probably be my favorite, although it's not my favorite when the filming is happening. Not at all. Boston is a film-friendly town, and I've encountered movie crews many times here. And it never goes well because they're always so arrogant and incapable of interacting with human beings in a normal way. One time, I was leaving the Brattle Bookshop. I had packages to mail, and I wanted to just walk up to the post office in the State House. So I left the Brattle Bookshop, went up West Street, crossed the street, and entered Boston Common to walk up towards the State House. And I noticed, some chain link fencing that was up, but the path was still clear. I was walking up the path, I wasn't thinking anything about it, and this guy, this long-haired, canned guy, obviously a movie studio guy or whatever, said, "Sorry, sir, you're going to have to take another route here. We're filming." And I looked at him and said, "Okay, you're filming, but that's what the fence is for, right? The fence isn't here." He said, "Yeah, I know, but we need this space too. Sorry." And I was in a cranky mood, and I said, "The last time somebody ordered me around on this particular patch of ground, he was a redcoat working for the British Army." He didn't understand that, and I didn't want to make an issue of it, but it happens all the time. But in terms of settings that I can see instead of having to deal with, I would say the Athenaeum. Number 2, were there any writing or publishing trends that you're glad went away? One that I'm really glad, I'll be really glad when it goes away, if it ever does, is autofiction. It has completely taken over the world of fiction, and I'd be really glad when it's gone. But also, there was a time there in the late 70s, the mid to late 70s, there was a time there when the mid-century, what Hannah's books calls the mid-century misogynist, had full sway. They had full dominance over the American fiction literary landscape. And as a result, every single book that you read was all long, loving descriptions of the people's pre-epic members. And that got old really fast. So I was glad that went away. Although I'm not happy with the misandry that replaces it. So I can't win for losing here. Jenny Park says, "How do you feel about the For Dummies series of books as a starting point for learning new things?" They were good when they were the only game in town, but there is no reason to do that if you have Wikipedia. Wikipedia is self-correcting, and it's done by experts, not by hacks who are given a brief and go to the library and look up things in the encyclopedia that they might understand it, they might not understand it. Wikipedia is self-correcting by experts and has tons and tons of hot links to further resources. So they were good in their day, but they're totally unnecessary now. Wikipedia it's not even an evil website. It's a virtuous website. Why not use it to the full extent? But keep in mind, if you use Wikipedia every day, or if you use it often, for instance, you writers out there or you freelancers out there, if you use it, pay for the privilege. Next time they're doing one of their fundraisers, don't just click right through it. Pledge $10. Give them money. They're giving you a lot, so give them money. But anyway, Jimmy Kirkham says, "Hey Steve, congrats. Are you a hyperbolic? How about a parabolic?" Hyperbolic or a parabolic what? Those are adjectives, not nouns. You don't say what the noun is. What is a good book on parabolics? Are you saying parabolic functions here? Are you leaving out the nouns intentionally? I think this might be a joke that I'm not in on. You can't possibly be asking me, of all people, for a recommendation about a book about math. I have no idea. I think I might be misunderstanding the question here. Steve Gilhool says, "You have recommended reading without sub-vocalizing in order to read faster. I've tried this, but can't seem to not hear the words in my head. And when I do succeed in suppressing that voice, I don't seem to absorb the information on the page. How do you learn to read without sub-vocalizing? Do you have any tips on how to develop this skill?" You say it yourself. You have to develop the skill. You learn to sub-vocalize what you're reading when you were a baby, when you were a kid. It was reinforced all through school. It is a very, very old habit. It takes a while. You have to excuse me. You have to be forgiving with yourself and give yourself some time. It takes practice. Look at all the practice that you put into sub-vocalizing. It's a huge amount. The fact that you don't remember a lot of it doesn't decrease the fact that you were doing it all the time. Eliminating sub-vocalizing, if that's what you want to do, you don't have to, but if that's what you want to do, it's going to take time to do. It's a muscle that you have to learn how to build and how to use. Faisal Hadi says, Rhonda Stothers asks, "What started Poetry Saturday?" Is that a question for me? Let's just move on. These questions are a little bit off the ring here. Culture Fan says, "Hello, Steve. Hope you are well." What do you think of Wool and the trilogy by Hugh Howey? they didn't. I know they have lots and lots of fans. They didn't really do anything for me. Yay or nay about A Fire Upon the Deep by Werner Vinge? Oh my, it's a definite yay. It's one of the greatest science fiction novels ever written. And what about The Dying Earth by Jack Vance? Same thing. Definitely read it. Absolutely. Booknick says, when you lived in India, did you ever have any famous swamis over for lassi or samosas? No, I did not. BBZZ4321 says, what is your opinion of Anthony Burgess? He's great. Which of his lesser-known books, i.e. not A Clockwork Orange, do you suggest? Well, I don't know that I'd suggest the lesser-known books, but Napoleon Symphony, Dead Man in Bedford, Earthly Powers is his masterpiece and one of the greatest novels of the 20th century. Things like that. The normal things. I would also recommend Man of Nazareth and Kingdom of the Wicked, which tend to fall off the radar for Burgess readers, but they are quite good. Let's see here. Anthony Trollope. What is a good order to read his work? I really enjoyed The Way We Live Now, so want to explore more of his work. You can jump in pretty much anywhere. I know he's famous for having 2 books in series, but in those series, there are only a couple of times where the one book depends on the previous one, like Phineas Finn and Phineas Redux. In a case like that, you wouldn't want to read Phineas Redux first. You also wouldn't want to read, for instance, The Last Chronicle of Barset without reading some of the other books in the Barsetshire series. So you want to be careful there, but otherwise, you're fine to go. You're fine to go anywhere. Let's see here. What is your opinion of William Golding? I enjoyed both Lord of the Flies and The Inheritors. Pincher Martin was good, but I didn't enjoy it as much as the others. Seemed a little dragged out to me. I've not read his many other works. Definitely try The Spire. Definitely read that. Which French and German classics are lesser known but worth seeking out? Which translations do you find particularly good? Not off the top of my head. I have no idea. First of all, I wouldn't even know what's lesser known. I mean, we'd have to define our terms a little bit better there. And the translators, good Lord, I'm not the person to ask. Finlay Miles says, congrats. I don't think I've heard you talk about either William Blake or Roberto Bolaño, 2 of my faves. Are you a fan? I'm afraid I'm a fan of neither. James Holder says, which university presses are your favorites? Well, I've reviewed more Yale University Press books than anyone else in the world. I'm pretty sure that is uncontested. I really like Yale. I also love Harvard University Press and the Belknap Press. I'd say probably it would be Yale and Harvard. Princeton brings up a close third, though, there. They're really good. Stuart Durbin says, what is your typical diet? Where do you get your energy? Well, I get my energy from being 28 years old. I'm a 28-year-old sexy influencer with bee-sting lips and a snub nose and A-frame shoulders and washboard abs and dancer's hips and smoldering come-hither eyes. That's where my energy comes from, really. But in terms of typical diet, when I don't have guests over, when I have guests over, we shoot the moon. And when I am a guest somewhere else, like when I go up to the house in Vermont, then we shoot the moon. But otherwise, I care very little about that sort of thing. I throw emphasis on it as a social function around friends. But when I'm on my own, a bowl of steamed rice is just fine by me. Let's see here. Faisal Hadi says, did you fill the free library with books? All right. I mentioned I would do that, and I need to do that. The problem is actually a good thing. I said the way that I need to remember to bring books to fill with a local free library near me is to fill a plastic bag with books ahead of time and put it at the door. So the next time Frida and I are going out, I can just grab it. And the reason why I haven't done that is a good thing, which is that I don't have any plastic bags anymore. Massachusetts has largely outlawed them, and good for them. Everybody should. It's perfectly possible to get along in life without them, and the damage they do to the environment. That one thing. So I need to, grab a tote bag, I guess, just an ordinary tote bag that I can fold up once I've delivered the book. So I haven't done it yet, no. C.M. Spiff says, you've often noted your contrarian views on people like George Washington and Napoleon. Yes. Would you ever consider doing something like a Contrarian's Corner to better explain your positions? I look on this YouTube channel as a Contrarian's Corner. I'm sure many others would be interested in your expanded thoughts on these topics. Well, I could certainly make videos on each of them, just autopsying. Well, God knows I've done that enough for both Bonaparte and Washington in print many times over the years. I've sautéed them. Gina Stan, your books, another booktuber, says, why do publishers send you a finished copy after sending an ARC? Are you supposed to write your reviews from the finished copy? You are. Technically, you are supposed to technically, the ARC is still subject to editorial changes, to proofreading changes and whatnot, and the finished copy is not. The finished copy is the thing that's going to the bookstore. So technically, if you're going to quote from the book, or in the case of a nonfiction work where you're going to chase the sources down, you should work from the finished copy. Publishers don't always make that very possible. Often they will get you the finished copy long after any working reviewer will have had to have filed their copy, so that maybe the venue that you're writing it for can use the finished copy to double check your work. But in terms of writing the review, I have fallen into the habit of just picking the stuff in the advance copy, the ARC, that is permanent. You get a sense for what is or is not up for grabs. But yeah, technically that is how it's supposed to work. You're supposed to get the finished copy to double check your work, to make sure all of your quotes and facts are right. Reed Becca says, now as a millionaire, which overpriced watch will you be buying to distance yourself from the unwashed masses? Yes, a huge analog watch. Can you imagine such a thing? It'd be ridiculous. And the reason why I'm not a millionaire is because I don't monetize my channel and hyper monetize it. Or I had one person contact me a couple of years ago about all the lost opportunities for my channel. Said, you should monetize mid-roll ads, end-roll ads. You should do. There are all sorts of sponsorships that you should do, and because you have a loyal following, so if you endorse something, it'll mean a lot. And also that I could create some sort of webinar and charge people. Ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. You don't charge people to talk to them if they're your friends. You don't. I'm not going to get an analog watch. I don't need it any more than the dude bros who show them on their videos. They all check their phones all the time. Faisal Hadi, again, says, what is your opinion of John le Carré's novels? They're great. Almost all of them are. They decrease in value as he gets older. Now, it's a horrible thing to say, but it's true. But the ones written in the fullness of his strength, or even he hit a wonderful winter period, a kind of late style period, where he wasn't a young writer anymore, and he hit a wonderful period that, to me, perfectly epitomizes late style, a kind of wintry, authoritarian style where the books got shorter but better. But then the last few if you start with the books written in the fullness of his strength, you won't go wrong. Let's see here. Faisal Hadi again. Do you have an opinion on Alexander Dugin books? I don't think I've read that. It's not ringing a bell at all. And finally, we're done. We're not going to move on to another set because we're done. Richard Reed is the final question here. So this is going to be 3 parts. What do you think of Burlingame's biography of Lincoln? What a way to end. Well, it's a magisterial thing, obviously. I don't mean to sound ambivalent. It is a great work of biography, a truly great extended work of biography. The only reason you hear a but in my voice is because of Lincoln, not so much his biographies. I've never read a full-length biography of Lincoln that really did it for me, and I think that's probably my fault rather than the biographer. It's probably just that I find certain parts of Lincoln's life incredibly more interesting than certain other parts, which is why my favorite Lincoln books are always smaller studies. They're always more narrow ambit rather than a cradle to grave type biography. But Burlingame is as good as it gets. So there you go. That is our 5 million views Q&A. And that's wonderful. And I want to finish up, of course, by thanking you all for 5 million views. Who knew? That's amazing. That was a lot of fun. And I'm going to wrap